Welcome to the Fifth Trooper Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Fifth Trooper Podcast. My name is Jay Shalansky, and joining me this week, as always, is Evan Trash Panda Bullris.
Hey, how's it going?
You sounded happy this time.
This time.
This
time.
He always sounds depressed. So anyways, also joining us today, a very special guest, hailing all the way from the northern borders of Canada to continue on our international feast for your ears. We have Chris Zenga.
Evan's depressed because you named him the Trash Panda. I'd be depressed too.
I'd like to get something off my chest here.
Oh, here we go.
There's been a lot of people online that have been coming at me pretty hard about how I've been mistreating my friend Evan by calling him Raccoon and Trash Panda. Evan, for the record, let everyone know, are you okay with this new moniker?
Yes, I am fine. I can't see the script, Jay. Don't move it anymore. Everything is fine here. How about you?
How are you?
So, Chris, we have Chris on for what I mentioned earlier, to keep in fashion with our international shows that we've been doing. We've been trying to every episode have someone internationally join us. And also, I don't remember what episode it was. I probably should have looked it up, but I didn't. But a while ago, Chris had joined us, and we had a very real conversation about depression and gaming. And so actually, to kind of maybe have a part two, I guess, Chris, we're going to talk a little bit about anxiety and gaming.
For sure.
So, we'll start the conversation off with Chris. I'm going to let you kind of talk it up. So, Chris talks to us, and we have a private messaging group, and I mean, he's very vocal about it elsewhere as well. But, in particular, we get to talk to Chris about a lot of good stuff. And one of the things Chris shared with us was how anxious he was. And I mean, you didn't even need to tell us, but like how many times you were asking us about lists and what you should bring and what is, what's going to happen and what, and all this stuff. I think we could have picked up on that.
Oh yeah.
But kind of walk us through that. Because I think if people have heard of your name, or I'm sure they've seen you online, but you're posting all the time, you do our shirts, you do shirts for some of the other community members. Mm-hmm. And so you're always posting online, but kind of talk us through like in real life versus online posting.
So I think, we'll go back a couple years when I started playing X-Wing, and I had a real thing I like to call just list building anxiety. And it got to a point where I was sitting there staring at the cards and saying to myself, I don't know if I should field this particular squad. And the word was should. And it was a weird word to think about now that I'm thinking about it in hindsight. It doesn't matter what you should, it's what you want to, or what do you feel comfortable bringing? What are you happy to bring? What do you want to play? The ships you want to play. And it got to a point where I stopped playing the game entirely because I was just so scared that I was going to bring the wrong loadout. Scared for what people would think, scared for how they would perform. If I underperformed, would I look silly from bringing a list that didn't perform really well? So I just stopped playing. Fast forward a couple years, Legion comes out. I'm jacked on the whole hobbying side of things, thinking, well, I could have the same issue, but maybe if I slowly ease into it, it won't be so bad. And then it kind of slowly crept into it again. The difference this time is I was never part of the X-Wing community. It was me and my best friend Tim. We played once a week. We had one or two tournaments that we attended locally, maybe two. But this particular group, there was a lot of support, a lot of people joining in the Facebook group right away, a lot of people getting really acquainted, hitting it off, joining into private messaging groups. I think maybe the first month or so, you and I and Evan and a lot of the core guys that are around the group a lot were already in our private group. We were already talking outside of the Facebook chat group, and that was the tell for me, is that we were making friends really fast, and then nurturing these relationships on our off time. It wasn't just arbitrarily through the group, we were looking forward to talking with each other, after work, after hours, maybe even during work for some people. But that was the difference for me between X-Wing and Legion, is that particular piece, is that camaraderie that came right out of the gate. So the anxiety was there, but I felt I had a support system to bat the ideas off of. And the community won't know this, but anybody in our private chat group, we have a couple. We have one, you and I, and we have one where there's a bunch of guys, like just a ton of people that are in the community are in there. It's not so much private anymore now that I look at the list of how many people are actually there. But you guys will see, like 4 weeks leading up to this event, I went from I'm not playing, I'm just going, to I'm gonna play, I think, to yeah, sure, I'll play, to 3 times a day asking you guys about the modifications I've made to my list. And literally, it was post after post after post. I tried this, I didn't like it, what do you think? I tried that, what do you think? Okay, I'm going to try your idea. Hey Jay, I tried your idea, what do you think? And I kept trying and modifying, and it all that X-Wing anxiety, it all came back. Am I going to go to this thing? Am I going to bring a list that that people are going to go, well, that's stupid, or what? Why would you feel that list, or why would you bring that card, or not bring that card? And it all came flooding back, all those old emotions of, now I'm trying to impress other people with my my acumen and my strategy and my gameplay ability, all the things I completely lack, but I'm trying to fake. At this point in my mind, I'm trying to fake it. How can I go there and impress these people with this knowledge that I don't have, but want them to think I have?
So let me I just want to interrupt, because what's going on in my head is that I think a lot of people who don't suffer from like real anxiety, like I think we're all have a little bit of anxiety when it comes to anything in life, right? Anything that's new for us, or something that we want to do well at, I think we suffer a little bit of anxiety. But could you kind of walk through maybe the mindset and kind of a little bit more detail of the depths of what that anxiety causes in you as a person? Because the surface level of your explanation, I think we can all kind of connect with that. So what takes it to that next level for you, where it becomes a hindrance to moving forward?
So I guess the short answer is I still don't really know. There are lots of triggers, like when again, we talked about depression last time, and I suffer from social anxiety. I'm also diagnosed bipolar. I have a neurological disease that causes me to forget and to stutter, which there it is. So it doesn't happen a lot, but it happens at the worst possible moments. And there are all these triggers. Like the first time I met with you guys is, am I going to give them a good show? Am I going to be a good interview? Are the people listening going to care, or are they going to think it's a waste of their 45 minutes, that segment I had? And then it's things like, am I going to play well? And those are all triggers. The anniversary of my dad passing away, things like that. Those are triggers, and they're reasons to be sad, reasons to be upset. But with anxiety and mental health issues, there doesn't always need to be a trigger. So the why is still really, really unknown. But if you want to know what happens to me, like it actually happens to me when it happens, that's easy. I start to doubt a surface level. What am I doing here? Is it the right decision to make? And then all of a sudden I break down and I get very upset. I get very upset with myself for not understanding the rules of a game that I've been playing for 2 years. I get very upset for not understanding that you have to roll a white die for every suppression, not just one white die to remove suppression. I like the simple rules. Cover. Heavy cover versus light cover. So it gets me very upset at myself that I don't know these simple rules. And then I start to get I shut down, and I don't talk to anybody, and I don't interact with anybody, and I just kind of sit quietly alone and just think and think and think and think. But now I'm not thinking about the game or the rules. Now I'm thinking about why. Why am I broken? Why am I not working properly? Why can't I just get over this? Why can't I figure any of this out? And you lose all those steps that you learn in therapy, and steps, simple steps, like your friends always say, call me if you need me. I don't know how many times you guys have said, hey man, just reach out if you need something, just call me if you need me. You forget all of that. You completely shut down, and you don't even turn to the people or the things that will give you some kind of comfort, some kind of relief. And then and then it could just go on like that for days, where you go to work like a zombie, come home, don't interact with your family, your friends. I don't talk to my wife. I just think it gets really bad. The shutdown is really, really bad. So that's kind of exactly what happens to me, as to why I still don't really know.
Right. And it's funny. So I have had two, like, in my lifetime, and this isn't as severe, but like I've had two like real panic attacks in my lifetime where like I couldn't breathe, like real bad.
Mm-hmm.
And the best way like I could describe it for folks out there who have never experienced that, or don't understand the anxiety that what Chris is talking about, it's as if someone's like, hey, go lay in that box and just lay there. And you're like, okay, that makes me uncomfortable, but you know what? There's no top on the box. I'll be okay. And then suddenly they like slide the top over, and they're like, hey, it's okay. You could still push your way out, but there's just a top now. And you're in the box, and you start freaking out because now you're in a box, a closed box.
Yep.
But your friends are outside. So you're like, I'm okay. But then you start hearing them nailing it shut. And it's just like every time it's like another nail, and like all this stuff just starts adding up, and you're like, oh my God, another nail. I'm never getting out of this box. And they just keep nailing and nailing and nailing. And then all of a sudden, like you're in full on panic mode because you're like, I'm going to die in this box forever.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden you push on the top, and it was never nailed. It was just a blanket. Right. And it's it just like one moment you think that's it. I'm in this box. I'm going to die. This is it. And then next thing you realize you were just under a blanket.
Yeah, and
it doesn't make any sense.
No, and to give your listeners a bit more depth to that is, I will wake up out of a deep sleep in a panic attack, and to put into perspective, the box that Jay's talking about is my entire house. So I jump out of bed, gasping for breath, holding my chest as if like I'm having a heart attack, and I'm reaching for walls. I'm reaching for the door. I open the door to our bedroom. I'm in the hallway. Nothing. I run down the stairs, try to get into a larger living room, maybe a bigger space. Mm-hmm. Nothing. I've run out into my backyard, -25, 2 feet of snow in just boxer shorts. This happened a month ago. It's funny. I'm saying
Celsius.
Celsius. Yeah, Celsius. Yeah. I'm saying it because it's kind of funny, but just so everyone really gets it, is that I had to run outside in the middle of winter in snow, just in my underwear, gasping for air to let that cold air hit me in the face, fill my lungs, before I could snap out of it. And that box that you're referring to, it was every room in my house, and that's a very, very real thing. And I've had my share of those. And like you said, okay, I'm in the box, the lid's not nailed down. Oh God, I hear nails, I hear hammering. Like you almost ramp up the emotions, even though they're not really happening, but you're convincing yourself they are happening. And that's just the power of your mind and our lack of control over that. And you'll hear people tell you all the time, count to 10, breathe through your nose, do your meditative thinking. That's all well and good on a Saturday afternoon in the backyard with a beer in your hand, and you're relaxed and chill, and but it's not always able to work when you're in the moment. And that's what's scary, is none of those things that are supposed to help will help. And that's a terror that kind of grips you,
Yeah. And it's crazy because, like, for instance, I don't remember what the trigger was. I was like watching a movie or something, and I was actually by myself, and like something triggered, and it just started, like things just started piling up, and it was just like, okay, this is gonna happen. Well, what if what if I just died right now? Like, who's gonna take care of the kids? And then
Yep.
you know what I mean? And then the next thing was like, oh my God, this is a heart attack. This is what a heart attack feels like. And then like my knees started to get weak. And then I'm like, wait a second, I can breathe fine. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and it was like, you're like your brain, your brain that has thoughts is kind of like coming back to you going, whoa, we're cool. Everything's cool. But then your other brain is going, it's not cool. Light this place on fire. Like,
I joke all the time. I want to watch movies with dragons and dwarves and elves and aliens. I don't want to watch any movie about cartels and drug dealing and people breaking the law. I couldn't watch Breaking Bad. I cannot watch shows that feel too real because I get in my own head about this again. Funny, not funny. I stopped watching Wolf of Wall Street because I thought the cops were going to break into my home whilst I was watching it, somehow thinking I was involved in what was going on in the movie. And I know people are out there thinking, like, this is wild. Like, you're just watching a Leonardo DiCaprio movie, but that's a trigger for me. Watching something that's so real gets in my head to a point where I think, this is happening. And then I don't know if this happens to you, Jay, but then every show I watch, let's say for example, I'm having an issue with parenting. Okay, you're having a hard time. Your kid's having trouble, and again, you know this all too well, having kids of your own. Everything you watch has some kind of parenting issue in it, and you're like, what the F? Like, why are now all the shows popping up that have parenting troubles? And you change a channel and it's like The Parent Trap. What? everything you do is regards to what you're thinking in your. It's almost like you're manifesting the TV, and it's not, but.
Yeah, and it's like you can analytically look at it, and it's hard to explain to people because, like, when Chris described that, part of his brain, I think, Chris, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but part of your brain was going, the cops aren't coming. Like, this is just a movie, dummy. But then the other part of your brain is like, but what if they are? And like, and you can't. It's like, it's almost like a whisper in like in like the back of your head.
Yep.
And it doesn't shut off. And even though analytically speaking, you're going, that's not real. This is a movie. I'm being stupid. It's like this. Your body is just like, well, we're going to ramp up because we think it's going to happen. And your brain's like, but it's not happening. And your body's like, we don't care.
Yep. No, you're happening. And again, to give everyone a bit of a clearer picture is, if you had your mind scream at you once a day, that's not going to happen, dummy. But it's once a day. What people don't realize is the whisper, although not as loud, is whispering the other 23 hours of the day. You are constantly hearing the whisper. And that is the biggest struggle. And again, we're trying to paint all these pictures and give analogies and break it down to its base form, just for anybody who's not familiar with this or not really had experience with someone who has had a mental illness. But literally, that is the best way to describe it is, the loud, hey, you're fine. It's loud, but that only happens once. And the whisper says, fine, left side of the brain, scream. Go ahead, I'll give you an hour. Scream all you want to. Are you done screaming? Great. Now I'm going to whisper for the rest of the day. And it's the rest of your life. And it's a constant whisper forever. And you, I don't want to say you. I can't shut it off. And it's very hard for most people to shut it off. I'm not even sure if it's possible to shut it off per se. You just need to find
how to manage it.
Ways to manage it, or ways to give that loud part of your brain some more time on the microphone. If your loud part, the rational part, can be a bit more present, then it'll drown out the whispers, and they're still there, but you just can't hear them as often. And then, like I said, something will happen, like the anniversary of my dad's passing will come up, or 24 hours before this tournament, and I know people are thinking, like, your dad dying in a game, this cannot be the same thing. Trust me, I know it's not the same thing, but my brain doesn't. And all my brain
Well,
says
and
is
it's
they're
not
both triggers.
right. It's right. You're not equating them as. It's not like you're laying there and someone puts, let's say, you're the passing of your father's like 100-pound weight on your chest, and then the tournament's like a 50-pound weight. It's still weight on your chest. Like
Yep.
it's still gonna like be weighted, and you're still gonna be there going, how am I gonna deal with this now? Like now I got this weight on my chest, and so and I think for those of you at home too, Chris is clearly talking about a larger a mental illness and depression and like, but I think this can happen on us like a more of a microcosm too, with just small panic attacks.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't have to have this going on all the time. This can just creep up on you out of nowhere. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate more with that. It's just like these kind of smaller panic attacks where, like I said, I've had two in my whole life. They're more, within the last 10 years as an adult. And it's more of, I don't like, I can't, I don't have that constant thing like Chris is describing, but I did in that moment. Like it was the same, like what Chris described happened in that. I think it was, it feels like it's forever, but it was like half an hour or something. But then that whole night, like I just kept thinking about it. Like, and you're like, okay, I'm good now. But what the hell was that?
Yep.
And like, how do I make that so that doesn't come again?
Yeah.
And so, but like that, that whisper thing, because it's like your brain, like I said, you're like shouting to yourself. You're like, dude, you're fine. Like you're not having a heart attack. Like, look, take your pulse. Your pulse is okay. Like you're breathing fine.
Yeah.
But then that little whisper is like, no, you're having a heart attack. You're gonna die here.
Well,
And you're just like, what?
Well, and that's the thing is, I want to. I'll say this is I've had a lot of emails, a lot of DMs come my way since you gave me the platform a year ago. And a lot of people have reached out to say, I'm going through this too, or thanks for speaking up, or any variation of that. And at the end of the day, I only want to bring awareness so people can feel comfortable to talk about it or to accept it. It's not something to be ashamed of, and with people are hearing this now, I want to make it very, very clear is what I have is, I would say, on the extreme end of mental illness, but I don't want someone to be listening and say, well, I don't have any of that, but I still get really nervous when I'm meeting someone new at a tournament. And that first moment when you shake hands and you say, good luck. Like I'm nervous about that. That is the 50-pound weight versus the 100-pound weight that Jay just talked about. It doesn't matter the weight of the weight. Well, it doesn't matter the weight of the weight. It just matters that you have that weight, that burden you're bearing. And I just want everyone to know, if they don't take anything else away from this, but this one thing is, regardless of the intensity or the extremities of how much you are suffering is suffering. So if you are, acknowledge it, address it, talk to someone about it, because I little things can just evolve into larger things if they go unchecked, or even if they remain just little things. That's still gnawing at you, that little whisper in the back of your brain. It's enough to affect you, so it's enough to say something about.
Yeah. Okay. So with that in mind, you clearly were having anxiety moving into the event. We just kind of described it, well, maybe a little bit at length to what anxiety is and how that. But I think it's good. I think it needs to get out there, and I think people need to recognize it. Even if maybe you don't have it as a listener, but maybe a friend of yours does, and maybe this will help you kind of empathize at some level with what's going on with them. And so okay, so you're having anxiety. We all talk to you, like you said, sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't, and you keep asking the question. So put me right up to the, I guess if we can swiftly go through to the night and then the morning of the event.
Yeah, so the night before, I was watching Clone Wars, getting caught up again for the new season to come out this week, which I'm sure everybody is super excited about. And I'm sitting there watching, and I'm like, oh God, I didn't like that sniper strike team. And just this thought came into my mind. I didn't like that sniper strike team. And I was talking to Luke a lot for weeks leading up to this, and he's like, dude, the strike team is where it's at. It's done me well, and I'm like, yeah, you know what? Listen, if the world champ is giving me some advice, I might as well just try that, try the unit out. So I put it in, and I played it for a while, and I didn't really understand how to use it. So I sat there and said, oh, it's not working for me. I'm going to ask the guys if I should take out the strike team and put in a dewback instead. So I did. And then I got mixed responses like, oh, dewback's hard to use. Yeah, but what about your ranged attack? Blah, 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 blah. I went back and forth for almost 25 minutes, half an hour. And at the end of the day, I just said to myself, dewbacks play similar, or I play them similar to IRG, with the charge versus the relentless and the melee ability. So, screw it. I'm taking the snipers out, and ranged attacks be damned. I'm gonna go in with the dewbacks, and I'd played dewbacks a bunch since they came out. So at least I went to bed thinking I'm bringing a unit that I know. Whether I can perform with it or not, I don't really feel comfortable with the snipers. But again, it was, I want to say like 11:30, 11:45 when I was still talking with all you guys, and up to that moment, I'm like, I got to be up in 6 hours to drive to this tournament, and I'm still thinking about changing my list 6 hours before I play. Yep. And that's where, if it wasn't so late at night and I was going to go to bed, I probably would have sat there for another 3 or 4 hours just debating over whether or not I should bring the snipers versus the dewbacks, and it would have manifested into maybe I'm just not going to go at all. And that's what would have happened the night before.
So okay, so night before, a little torturous.
Yep.
You got, now let's talk about I'm gonna jump ahead a little bit here, just to kind of, no offense, Chris, but to speed this up a little bit.
No, sorry.
So I'm assuming you were torturing yourself on the drive there.
We can
just make that assumption.
Yep.
You get there, you start to see your friends, you start to see the Hooded Goblin, which is a cool place, and you got all these guys coming in. Now what happens?
That the friends, piece, that's what really kind of saved the day for me, is that I walked into a place where I saw a bunch of people who I've known very well for a long time. I finally met Evan, who I've known but haven't met, and that was this kind of like moment of, it felt good. And then I had people like calling out to me. Like I had the cooks were like, you made it, and I saw Chris, and I went over and shook his hand, and a buddy of mine, Dan, was there, and I got a big bro hug from Dan, and that was that moment where I saw them, but they also saw me, and they were happy that I was there, and they were excited to see me. I had people who I didn't know, I've never met, but they knew me. And I've seen you around the group. And that at that moment, I realized I'm going to be surrounded by a bunch of guys that, even if I don't know them, it's all good. I use the word safe in our message that I put the night I came back, because I felt safe to be around guys where if something had gone wrong, or if I forgot something, or if I played something incorrectly, it would be okay. And that was the big moment for me. And then once I got that first game under my belt, and then it really, I surprisingly didn't have trouble with the rules. And as much as I thought, it's just the things that should have come naturally started to come naturally. And all of that nervousness and all that desire to do well kind of melted away. And then I just played well. And I'll say this, and I don't want people to think like, this is what people who lose say. But even though I lost, I went 0-3. I gained so much from those games, and I played the best 3 games. I want to say in public or at home. I played the best 3 games I've ever played on Saturday. It was, again, I lost all the games, but the first 2 were ridiculously close. I was the first game, I had my hand in my pouch. I had 1 token to pull out. All I had was 1 token left. I knew what it was. It was my mortar. And all I had to do was pull my hand out of the bag, lay it down on the mortar, and move him a quarter of an inch forward to be within range to capture the KP. It's all I had to do to win the game. And I put my hand in the bag and I grabbed the token, and this elation filled me. I've got it. I've got the token. Time!
Yeah.
I lost my mind.
Yeah, that has happened, dude. That is the story of competitive play. That happened to
Jay
me. I've
lost
talked
a
to
game at LVO 2 years ago because of that, right? Like, and the guy was even just take the shot. You're like, no, man, it's they call it time. The guy's like, dude, just do it. Who cares? No, I'm gonna keep it like.
But yeah, so I think the thing I want to just touch on this too, and part of the reason why I wanted to have Chris on to kind of talk about this and go over this is the key to this. And I think this is, and I don't mean to sound pretentious here, but I think the key to take away from this is, in human history, the whole reason that we gather and that we create these communities, whether they're small or large, or the reason we live in cities, the reason we as nomads decide to band together to like create these communities is what Chris said, in safety, right? Mm-hmm. And this is just something inherent in us through evolution, that we band together, whether it's safety from predators in the past, right? We don't really have many predators anymore, but it makes you feel safe and welcomed, and to kind of wash it down for this dumb game that we play, right? It's, it gave Chris the opportunity, after kind of torturing himself and panicking and like having all these second thoughts, that once he was surrounded by this community that we've built and that he's built for himself, he then felt safe. It was then a welcoming environment. And so I think that to any aspect of our lives, but since we're talking on a gaming podcast about Legion, I think that's the biggest part of Legion that we need to continue to focus on and realize, is that the community building and like the fact that we have a fantastic community, comparatively speaking to other gaming communities, mm-hmm. that we need to keep that going, because this is a perfect story of what that does. Not just from a gaming perspective, but on a human level.
Yeah, and honestly, I would say this to anybody who's either been in around the game for the last 2 years, or if you're brand new and this is your first introduction to the Fifth Trooper and to Legion in general, I would say post a lot in the community, comment on a lot of the posts, and be present, be part of that community. Because if I had none of the friends I had known at the event, I had run into people who knew me. One being your buddy Jeremy, Jay. He actually walked past me and said, "Chris, we're on table 3." And I'm like, my initial reaction was, "Cool, man, thanks." And then I thought, how did I screw him in the past? Why? How does he know me? Have I angered him in some way? I didn't know him, but somehow he knew me, and I'm hoping. And then when we got to the table, he's like, "Oh yeah, I see you so much in the group. That's how I knew who you were." And at that moment, that's the big takeaway for me, is if you're new, comment, post, share your stuff. You don't think it's up to snuff, if your painting is not very good or whatever, it doesn't matter. Post it, be present, be part of the community, talk to everyone, and develop these relationships, because you might be in a situation where you're the only guy who plays Legion, and you drive 2 hours to the nearest tournament and there's no one there that you know, but all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's Dave from the community, and you didn't know Dave, but now you know Dave. And that's I think the important thing. And we are, like you said, we're very lucky to have a group that we have, and we're very lucky to have places like you that kind of give a platform, and they're we're lucky to have Alex who's super interactive with the community, and it's a very unique space to be in, where in your worst possible moment you're not alone, and you're not without people who can give you advice or give you support. And like I said, I'm not a religious guy. Church is not my thing, but the idea of community, I get it. Like, that's why people flock together. They want that sense of togetherness, and there is that in spades in our community, and we're very lucky to have it.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks for telling us all that and kind of bearing your soul. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks for having me.
I'd like to take a few minutes here. We're going to actually cut to an interview. We interview Derrick Fuchs on the new models. He's the head of the modeling department over at FFG. So let's take a listen to that interview now, and we'll come back and finish this up.
Ground crew, can you hear me?
Okay, and I'm here with Derick. Derick, why don't you, it's been a little while since you've been on, so why don't you explain to our audience who you are and what it is that you do for FFG?
Yeah, so I am the sculpting manager for Fantasy Flight Games, and I manage and help direct the plastics department for us.
Yeah, so Derick was on. Oh God, I don't even know. All these podcasts kind of run into each other, but months at this point. And I really appreciate you coming back on, and we're happy to have you. But since the last time you were on, I believe just Clone Wars had just been announced, and we kind of talked about the hard plastics with the B1s and the new poses and everything that you guys were trying to attempt back then. And since then, we've had a whole slew of new units, and especially the last couple of weeks have been really exciting. So maybe the first question is, how has it been for your department? I mean, it must be really exciting from like the tanks for the two new factions to the new sculpts in the expansion packs for like the stormtroopers and the in the Civil War era stuff. Like how exciting has it been for your department?
Oh man, it's funny because we have this stream and we announce all these things, and we're still in the sculpting room at least. We're still anxiously awaiting for people to get their hands on, the phase 2s, the B2s, and the 2 tanks.
Yeah.
Which we talked a little bit about, and like those are some awesome products that we kind of again showcasing and demonstrating some of the things that we're learning with their new processes and the parting. We're hoping to receive a little bit of more positive feedback on the parting of those things. I think people will be happy with the assembly on the phase 2s and the B2s. But just in general, kind of like anxiously awaiting that. And then also knowing that we had this big announcement drop for the BX droids, the ARC troopers, Cad Bane and Padme. So like you said, it's been this kind of whirlwind of, we've kind of been a little glued to the forums and to the Reddit posts and all the other places we can find information and feedback and thoughts and, so yeah, I mean, that's been, it's cool. I just can't wait till everybody get their hands on it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's funny because I just briefly mentioned it, but I was thinking back when I knew we were going to have you on. I was kind of thinking back to our previous conversation and just talking about like the things that you wanted to, because you were more recent to the role, and so just the things you wanted to institute. And I think like we're seeing that already. I was looking at, for instance, the ARC troopers, the picture that's on the FFG page. And just all their poses, and they're just so dynamic. And I mean, listen, the paint jobs are phenomenal for them as well, and I think that helps. But the just the poses, and like they look like they're in motion, and they look like they're doing actions. And I know that's something that you originally, when we talked, was something you were trying to institute. But how has that progression been for you in seeing that come to life?
It's been great. I mean, I it's something I felt really strongly about. Like you said, we talked about it last time, and it's something I've been pushing, my team and our studio to kind of do a little bit more of with these because we can. And as we learn more and we get more comfortable in doing this stuff, we are able to take these poses further and add the dynamicness and the naturalisms and all the other little things we want to add that just elevate them above maybe what we were doing before. And this was a crazy wave for us. A lot of this stuff is worked on kind of in tandem, so to speak. We don't release these in quote unquote waves like X-Wing, but we kind of work on them and develop them and sculpt them somewhat like that. And a lot of the concepts and things that we were applying across the ARC Troopers, the BX Droids, Cad Bane and Padme, and then the other products that have yet to be announced, are a lot of the similar kind of new problems for us to tackle. And one of the ones being the flight and putting things up on flight stands and getting them in motion, and what does that look like, and how do we tackle that for our first attempt for Legion. And
Yeah, so how did speaking of the flight stands, because for those of you listening, if you haven't seen, I'm sure everyone has, but if you haven't, the flight stands on the ARC Troopers are super dope, and it really adds this element of flying. So, I know like this is tracking back, but the first flight stand that you guys kind of had was Boba's, which is more of like a jump stand, I guess, comparatively speaking, to these new flight stands. So what really like was the thought, or maybe lessons learned from going from Boba's kind of flight stand to what we have now with the ARC Troopers?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think when we were working on the Iden pack, the let's see, the Dio droid is on the Boba Fett or the speeder bike flight stand, right? And that was problematic for parting and getting that peg to fit in there, and it wasn't ideal, but it also wasn't the place for us to kind of design and put in a new stand yet. These products, like the ARC Troopers, definitely gave us reason to kind of rethink our approach to them. And we tried a bunch of different ways, right? We tried, the standard peg. It's kind of just straight entry into the mini. And we knew we kind of wanted to deal with elevations, not mechanically, but visually. So we knew we wanted at least a couple of sizes. But when you have it just as a single entry point and just plugs into something, one, you can kind of create some unsightly holes in the minis, which we didn't want. The placement of it had to be pretty specific, and often has to come right underneath the mini, and a lot of things can get in the way. And then you're kind of locked into these different heights that you don't really allow the end user, the players, to customize that or put, to change that elevation and kind of add the hobby side to it as well, right? And so we thought really hard. We looked at some other examples out there in the world, and we thought that we'd come up with a system, a peg one that can be assembled more and kind of curve around the mini. One adds this nice little curve and kind of sense of motion to it, so it's a nice looking stand. But also then the system for its connection is it's got a ball at the end of it, and then there's a chip that you glue onto the mini, and it has a socket. And it seems like that could be a little fiddly. On all of the ARC Troopers, underneath the jetpack, there's a little grooved in spot where you can easily glue that chip in, and then glue the flight stand to that. But the other really cool thing is it opens you up to, you can place that anywhere, and now you have a solid connection point anywhere on the mini that you decide to glue that, and you can rotate it and turn it, and you put it, like Corey I think showed on the stream, you put it on the foot, and now it just changes the way it looks. And that was something that as soon as we kind of went down that route, we really liked how much variety there was for players now, and the options available to them for kind of assembling these things. There's the one that we kind of dictate, or rather we kind of push forward in our marketing images, our back of the box, and the assembly diagrams, and the way we kind of intend it, for sure. But we also know that here are the tools, make it how you want.
Well, yeah, and I mean, and that's the biggest thing for any of these hobby games, right, quote unquote, is that the opportunity to be creative within the game is what draws a lot of us into it. And I would guess that's what draws a lot of you guys into it, and gals who are over there making the game. And I was thinking about that too, because the other thing we were talking about is like, with the changes, having the opportunity, and I think you guys got this a little bit with the upgrade expansions with the Imperials and the Rebel Troopers, but also with the Operative Luke and Operative Vader, where you took kind of these original pieces and you got almost like a second chance to work on them again. And how has that been for you to be able to like say, oh, you know what would be really cool if we added this little detail on the Imperial command, unit leader.
Yeah, I mean, with those packs in particular, as kind of everyone knows, like the Imperial Stormtroopers, for example, are still, the soft plastic.
Yep.
They were prior to our switch for those things. However, we did use that opportunity to still take what we have learned and what we were applying in later waves. You look at Operative Vader and you look at Corset Vader, and there's a huge difference there. And what we were able to get out of that material and out of our knowledge there and apply it to Operative, we were starting to apply it to the later products that are still soft plastic. And so we definitely wanted to take advantage of that opportunity, and update them so in certain ways, and but not too much where it would appear really weird if you're putting it into your unit and it's too stark of a contrast. And it felt like a nice little transition for the Stormtroopers. Was kind of our approach to them. The other thing I really like about them and that upgrade pack is, I think I saw somebody do it on, they posted on Reddit, or maybe it was the Facebook group, but they showed all of the kind of arms and backpacks plugged in to every body and all of the types, and that's exactly the kind of thing we were hoping people would do. We didn't really demonstrate that in the in the product's pamphlet, or the rule sheet, but it's something that we intentionally did with the cylindrical plugs and all the backpack plugs were the same. So, it's not stated, but there is that variety there, and that was kind of showcasing a little bit of the what we were doing towards the end with the soft plastic. And I feel like I've gotten off of the question a little bit.
No, that's okay. It was a good little journey we took there. Well, and I mean, yeah, I think it's, speaking as an artist myself, like it's always fun to be able to revisit things, because there's that saying that says we never finish art, we just abandon it eventually, right? And so like I think like having an opportunity to always to go back and take something that you loved doing the first time and kind of reconstituting it in a new way, and making it better and making these improvements that you wanted to make from the beginning is always a wonderful opportunity, I believe, for artists.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think, those products kind of represent that. Like any chance we're going to get to improve, we're going to take, but we're going to be considerate about it, right? We want to make sure that if it's something that's intended to exist standalone unit or, single mini, then our approach to that might be different than if it's intended to be inserted into an existing unit, because maybe we don't want to, like I said, create too much of a stark contrast. But absolutely, I mean, you kind of nailed it. Like artists and same thing goes for sculpting. It is art. You get to a point where you got to call it, but there's always more to do,
right?
And you can always tweak it, and you can always keep working on things. You can think about it differently, and so yeah, anytime we have the opportunity, we're going to relish that.
Yeah, and so I guess kind of going in that same line of thought with artistry and being able to do either revamping old things or doing completely new things. How has it been for the team? I mean, to work on some of these more, I guess we can call them more terrain-like pieces, like the escape pod or the bunker or the downed ATST. Like that seems to me like a nice departure maybe for the team who, you're always working on kind of these smaller mini sculpts, and then to be able to put that on your plate and be like, hey, we're going to make a bunker now. That must be exciting too.
Yeah, I think what's really exciting about it is the opportunity to do things that are like exclusively Star Wars. It's not just like a cliff face or a rock formation. It's it's the escape pod. Like you can't do that escape pod anywhere else. And
Right.
so being able to do that, or the bunker, like it's such an iconic, character, so to speak, in the Endor, fight sequences, and that whole scene. And you see, people are already using their own versions of it on tables and stuff. Like to be able to make that kind of detailed up, do a little interior and things like that, is super exciting for us. And it is a little bit of a change of pace. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's Escape Pod is super
Yeah.
detailed, super
Yeah.
cool. And I've seen a lot of different paint jobs on it now, and they're great. Like all the little rust effects and the like the damage as if it crashed. And I like seeing people base the scenery around it to match their kind of themes of their tables. Like, it's fun.
So I guess speaking to the painting, is there an opportunity for the team? I'm assuming there is with 3D printing and maybe sculpture and stuff, but is there an opportunity at some point during the sculpting process before you get to a finished product for the team to kind of get one of these painted up or paint one up themselves so they can see how it looks once it's painted versus just being, the plastic?
Yeah, I think that we are we do little test samples here and there on areas, right? And it's kind of one of the things that's always, as we go through our internal kind of reviews and critiques of each mini and each like unit, we bring some expertise into those rooms and kind of get their thoughts on these things. And there are instances where, for example, some of the likenesses will paint up and kind of get a sense of what's working on the face, for example, to make sure that the detail that we're kind of sculpting is going to come through. One in plastic, but then once paint's applied, does that still work? So yeah, I mean, it's those sort of things are considered all the way through the process, and we do a little bit of that here and there.
Okay, so talking about the process maybe a little bit more, in this new, I guess, new era of technology, how much, if whatever you can divulge here, but how much of what you guys do is computers and how much is traditional sculpting?
So for Legion, we do not do any traditional sculpting, except when we have a 3D print that needs to be altered a little bit.
Okay.
But that's only for internal reasons.
Yeah.
Everything is done digitally. Our main, if you're looking to make minis and things, our main software that we use is ZBrush, especially for our organic models. I lost where I was going with this.
That's okay. Yeah, so it sounds like, the question was probably a little tricky. Yeah, I mean, this was something I was thinking about a lot lately. I was actually watching something on Disney Plus, and they were talking about the Imagineers, and there's like one guy that still like sculpts stuff, and so like by hand, and so it just had me thinking like how much of that in the world in general is still out there, and how much have we moved to?
Much less.
Yeah.
Less. The what we call traditional sculptors are a rare breed these days. Everything's pretty much done digitally. All the manufacturing and the tooling of the molds and things are done digitally. And it is a completely new world for us because Legion really forced our hand in that change. Like this is the first area where we had to, evaluate our process and the way we do things and our understandings of sculpting and production and engineering of the parts. It started with Legion, and we had to quickly kind of learn, apply it, and then expand on that. And so, the first set with, the B1s, we were able to do them, but we weren't quite comfortable enough yet to do it for the arcs, or I'm sorry, for the phase 1 troopers. But we were already starting to apply it to the next products, right? And each new each new box, each new product kind of represents, in some ways we're still exploring. I think everyone, you get the phase twos, the B2s, those products are going to look different than the ARCs and the BX droids.
Right.
You're going to see, you're probably going to see where we've learned some things and we're applying that knowledge to our, our frames and our parting and our engineering of everything, and kind of the options we provide. That's one of the areas that we're still, figuring out exactly what we want to do. Right now we're playing it by product and giving options where we want to and where we feel like it needs it. Hopefully things like the arcs, tons of I mean, I look at the frame on that and there's tons of helmets and there's a couple of different arm options for some of the other swaps there. So
yeah, it's interesting because I don't and maybe we could talk about this, but I could kick it off a little bit. It's that, like, I don't know that people truly see, like, can visualize how this is done, because I think there's many levels to developing a product. From, you start with, like, kind of the ID, the industrial design of it, where it's the artists come in and they're like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna make this BX droid and he's gonna have this gun and this shield and, like, it's gonna look super cool and this is gonna be his pose. And then, like, the next step is, I like some sort of engineering mind has to then take that and go, yeah, that's all great, but how am I going to get this on a rack? And then,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like, okay, that's cool, but how are we going to make this and ship it? So now I got to figure that out. And then there's kind of like these layers of compromise, right, between the two, and then also, I mean, there's the whole company, right? There's all kinds of layers of compromise to get one unit out the door.
Yeah, I mean, what's great about our process is that we work so closely with everyone involved on the entire product, from Alex and Luke on the dev side to graphic design and the art team, and so we're always talking to each other and always kind of crossing these things with each other. Alex kind of mentioned this on the stream in regards to the BX droids. He comes to the table and is like, okay, I want BX droids. We're going to have 7 of them. He's got his unit size figured out and how many, heavies he wants to add, or extra, upgraded minis to add into the unit. And he's like, I want a shield option for them. I want, the sword option for them. I want one that has a sniper, and I need one that has this grenade. And and we're like, okay, we got to figure this out, because obviously we're not going to give, we don't want to make a single version of each of those things. There's plenty of examples of where we should be able to create options per, body type or pose, and so the BX are actually more so than even the ARC Troopers. The BX droids are quite a representation of that, where you have a couple of standard, let's see, how many do we have? Like 4, I think, 4 or 5 body stances. I think
I'm looking at it now. So you have the one he's sticking the gun through the shield, and then you have the other one, his arms up slightly more, sticking his gun through the shield. Then you have the knife with the wide stance. Then you have the unit leader with the gun and the binocs. Oh yeah, there's 1, 2, 3. There's like, well, I mean, each one of these 7 have almost a little bit different of a stance.
Yeah, and some of them, but some of them share the same body,
right.
Like, we've duplicated the body on the frame, and you can assemble all of these things as you see it there. But we maintain, for our own sake and kind of customization, some of the same body types across them. But yeah, so it starts with trying to figure that out, right? Like, you can already start to think it through your head, like, how are you going to go about doing this? How do we provide that one in the front that has the shield and the blaster out to his side can also have the sword and the shield or whatever? Like, how do you allow these things? Technically, I don't think that's mechanically a thing, but you could build it that way. And so it starts kind of all right, we know what we want to do. Now, how do we tackle it? And once we start getting through that process a little bit, actually, you kind of mentioned, do we do any traditional sculpting? Well, no. But one of the things we have started doing is we'll start sketching these things out in 2D form. We'll just get sketches of our pose and configurations, kind of the ideas to get down on paper.
Yep.
And that really helps bring everyone involved into, the kind of minds and things that we're thinking, so that, it's concept work. And that's a super helpful tool. Everyone kind of see the direction, see the options. It's easier to visually present that to people. And then we can all say, great, that looks good. Let's move forward to that. And it sounds simple, but then there's so much more beyond that.
Yeah.
Because then you actually got to sculpt it. And then you have to worry about, the pole directions. If you look at a frame, the mold sandwiches either side of it, and you cannot have detail that would be stripped away as you pull the mold apart.
Yep.
And so one of the reasons that, we make decisions on parting is exclusively for that. You have to tool your parts. You have to engineer them in a way that are going to be separated from a front and a back, or a top and bottom part of the, there's just two pole directions. And occasionally you can do some tricks with the molds where you add a slide in. I think R2 on the escape pod is an example of that. Now, if we could go back, I would probably alter that to have that R2 piece be a little bit more protected. I've seen some things where it falls off prior to people opening the product, because it's kind of exposed on the outside of the frame.
Mm-hmm.
But it's positioned there to allow a what we call a slide to hit detail on the side that isn't just the top and the bottom of the mold. And so you really have to engineer these parts and think them through, make detailed decisions based on that. A lot of these things you might see that that we have to consider draft angles and all of these sort of engineering and manufacturing considerations, in addition to capturing the detail and the likenesses that we're trying to capture. Because there's an IP consideration to be had here as well. I can confirm with all certainty that you guys saw a little clip of the assembly sheet for the BX droids on the Extreme. The heads are just one part. You don't have to glue two together.
Oh, good.
But to that end, if we, considering all this stuff that I'm just talking about, we would either have to use up a lot of mold space and kind of have ugly frames in order to have the heads be one part, or simplify that detail where now we're not having the ribbing on the back of those B1 heads and certain things like that. So it's a bit of a decision. Hopefully those are, everyone's assembled the majority of their B1s for the time being. And every assembly B2s and BXs are going to be much easier than that.
Well, and listen, I think that is some of those learning pains that not just you guys as a team have to go through, but I think this community has to kind of go through a little bit too. Is a lot of the community here, like myself, I come from a Warhammer background, so I am used to complex minis on frames, but a lot of the guys that are just getting into it, this is their first hobby game and they're here for Star Wars. So so that was, I think, a culture shock for a few people, but I think it's something that we as a community will grow with you guys as you guys fine tune what you're doing. We'll know what to come to expect for the next one. So like you said, with these next droids, it'll be like, oh, these are way easier. And then, it'll just be, it'll just be better for everyone.
Yeah, and I think our goal, we still really want these to be relatively accessible. So it just means we have to approach them a little bit smarter and put more thought into our engineering of the parts, and kind of, just focus on that in order to achieve that accessibility. And where we're not able to, we're going to have a few additional parts that, are necessary.
Right. Because it's that, like those compromises we were talking about earlier. Sometimes, the engineering part of it wants you to make a compromise to the artistic part, but you're like, no, that's a pretty integral part of this design that I can't compromise on because that's what it looks like. And
exactly.
So it's like, so you're just going to have to figure out how to make this so that it looks like that and we get it on racks. And it's like, well, it's going to be two parts then. And so
Yeah, and well,
yeah.
that's the thing too. Like we love all of these characters and these
Yep.
units and these vehicles and all of that, and we like what it is in Star Wars, and so we want to keep as much of it as possible and not simplify things where where we absolutely don't have to. Because I think the more detail we're able to bring out, the more accurate to film and all the other references that we use, uh, the better it is for just showcasing the world of Star Wars.
Yeah. And I think we can see that, for instance, like on the BX series, with the see-through plastic, right? On the shields is going to
Yeah.
be amazing.
Yeah, that was another part of the decision making. Like, what do we want to do with these shields? Should they be opaque? Should we do transparent, plastic and just have a little separate frame that is just these clear versions? And ultimately, that's what we decided on. Is we they're too cool, and how could we obscure the mini with some opaque, filled in solid color that people would just have to paint some sort of effect onto? Can we really support a clear shield design that allows
Mm.
like we see this all the time with acrylic pieces using as part of like scenery that fans make and use to represent like clear glass
Yeah.
interfaces and all of those things, and it's such a cool look, right?
Yep.
And how could we not apply that here? So that was definitely something we wanted to do. And then, for example, the holes punched through so that the gun, or the blaster can fit through. uh that was just because it's what they do in the show, and
Right.
you
Right.
see them stick the thing through the front, and like that's kind of cool. So why not do that?
Yeah. I mean that was kind of one of those things. We were looking at everything in the jump stands for the ARC troopers. We were like, whoa, that's kind of cool. And then once you see that gun coming through that shield, you're like, okay, that's some next level stuff, right? Like that's definitely putting you into the environment, which is really the goal, right? So the mechanics of the game that Alex and Luke do are one piece of that goal to bring you into the universe. But then
Mhm.
you guys have that same goal where when I field these minis, I need to feel like they're in that universe and they're what that character is.
Absolutely. And I think before joining FFG, that was one of the things that attracted me to the games that we make, is that whenever we work on a product that is so much a part of our consideration, is trying to bring those all elements of the game together to really tie that theme. Um, and with our Star Wars products especially, like it's not just the mechanics. How can each element, the art, tell more Star Wars and feel like it is what we're representing? The sculpts, the mechanics, and the gameplay, and the way that it resolves. So yeah, absolutely a part of our kind of process and things that we care very much about maintaining.
Yeah, well, and I mean, so if I feel like for each, I think this whole conversation is kind of leading in the same direction, but especially with the two new tanks, I feel like every heavy that has been made, starting with the ATST and the airspeeder in the beginning, and then moving to the Gav tank and the land speeder, and now to these two new tanks, I feel like when I look at these models that every time you guys do something, you're like, oh, that was pretty cool. Let's incorporate that into this next model, like that kind of artistic design or how we
Hmm.
design these little pieces. And I mean, I think that should be the most encouraging thing, is to see you guys build upon lessons learned from the old ones. And so I mean, with these two new tanks, how was that process for you guys, kind of taking the Gav tank, the ATST, the airspeed, everything that was done before, and the
Hmm.
land speeder, and kind of throwing it into these two new heavies?
Well, I mean, I think first off, like doing the AAT was it's just cool. I mean, I don't know if I ever thought not that I knew we would get to it eventually, but I don't know if I would ever be working on something like that. Like,
Yeah.
uh, the both of these tanks are super sweet. And honestly, they take a little bit of what we learned, but our approach to the vehicles have been, I think what is applied that we have kind of been working on is the customization, right?
Yep.
The options, and we started that with the Gav and the land speeder with some of the the minis that you can put on it or around it with the rocket trooper or the rifleman on the back of the land speeder, or the closed or open hatches on the Gav. Um, Same thing here. The AAT has less of that. It's just the droid up top. You can either have them, have the droid in there with the binoculars, or not. But there's a little bit of assembly rotation to the weapons and the cannon of it. And there's a lot more of that kind of customization options on the saber tank, with the pontoons, or I don't know how you call those things on the side, but they can actually be assembled to kind of rotate, or they have a range of motion, and you can assemble it in that, because that's what the rear flaps also can then be counter that, if you ever played the old Battlefront games where this is kind of inspired from,
Yeah.
or comes from. And you see kind of how the mechanics of that work, like the physicality of it. We tried to implement that as much as possible. Also, the missile pods can be assembled closed or open and exposed with the missile kind of standing up above it. I don't think either of the render, the paint, and the component layout, neither of those show that option. And it's a really cool look. I think my favorite is kind of having one side closed, one side open, and the missile kind of exposed out the side. It's just about to lay into whomever. And then on top, you have phase 1 or 2, kind of turret gunner that you can place up there. You can also close that hatch. And then I think mechanically the blaster turret on top is also a swappable. There's another weapon there. So a lot of customization went into that, and I think we're trying to apply that mentality to our vehicles, and just kind of expand on that as we go forward as well.
Yeah, I mean those are like, whenever someone asks me, "Hey, how do I get players to start playing Legion in my local area?" I'm like, put the ATST and the airspeeder on the table, and then now it's going to be put the saber and the AAT on the table, painted, and people will ask you what the hell is going on, because those are so iconic, and they're just going to be like, "What is this game? What is happening right now?" And I mean, you guys, kudos to you guys for, I mean, really I wasn't a big Battlefront guy, but like the AAT, like that's classic, from when I was younger. I'm just like, oh my God, there it is. Like,
same.
Yeah, this is what we wanted,
Exactly the same.
Yeah. So that is truly exciting for me. But yeah, and I guess I just wanted to one last thing, and I don't want to eat up too much of your time.
Oh, no
But
worries.
we had talked about this at the time too. We talked about Sabine and Bosk, having some different options, but it looks like that kind of carried into the two new operatives with Padme and Cad. And I know I'm skipping over K2SO and stuff, but really, because the new hotness is Padme and Cad. But with the hat, no hat, and her having the cloak or without the cloak, like that is some really neat touches, I think.
Yeah, I think it's sort of the same mentality, right? Like we know we want to provide options, but I think our characters deserve a little more in terms of like, how do we. So before, maybe it would be a little bit of an arm swap, and just for pure mechanical reasons, trying to provide different options for Sabine and Boss. And kind of our mentality now is really thinking about, well, not only are we trying to accommodate the mechanical needs, but also how can we provide as many like silhouette changes as possible to the mini for our hobbyists, and like Padme does go around with the cloak on or off, and can we give that as an option, because I think it looks really cool either way. and so it's a combination of both things. Cad Bane was like, he's so much more than just one pose, right?
Yeah.
And so how can we convey different aspects of who Cad Bane is through pose, and one being the kind of gunslinger, and the other being this, he's planning something. He's probably detonating a well thought out bomb or not, but yeah, like how do we bring more to the characters, or how do we showcase more of the characters than the singular thing that we're starting with? And I think that's really important kind of approach as we go forward as well. The challenge though is that we have to accommodate the mechanical needs, and then like you said, we talked about earlier, the artistic desires and needs as well.
Yeah.
But I think hopefully as we move forward, one of the things we'll see is more and more of this, where our characters are getting a lot more attention and diversity in their poses and silhouettes, and the options available to players to assemble them kind of how they would like to.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys have been doing a wonderful job, and I'm really excited to get all these minis that we've seen on the table, and I'm really excited to see what you guys do next, because it just seems like every new mini, every new unit that has been put out has just blown me away, and with some aspect of it. And so it's a really exciting time to be part of this game.
It is, and thank you. Yeah, I like I said, I can't wait till everyone gets their hands on these, and it's so funny that what we're working on now is, like, these seem so far in the past.
Right.
So yeah. Which is actually kind of fun, because we get to, like, oh yeah, great, people are finally getting to see these, and now we get to re-enjoy kind of all the excitement that we had as we were building it, and the things we were hoping to get feedback on. And we'll get that at the announcement now, and then when they release, we'll get that again. And we take all that feedback in, good, bad, positive, negative, all the excitement around it is great. And so
yeah, well, man, thank you so much for joining us again. And again, I appreciate all the work that you and your team do, and we're just so excited and appreciative of the artistic talent that you guys have, and what you guys are doing for this game. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, and my pleasure.
Yeah, so that was the interview with Derick. Love Derick. He always comes on and gives us good information, and I just love hearing about the process and the art.
Yeah,
the whole thing,
the models get better and better, right? Like,
dude, everyone is better. It's crazy. But anyway, so let's I'd like to go back to what we talked in our first segment. So basically this was a prime, right, Evan, up in Canada. So why don't you go ahead and tell us about it, and you and Chris can kind of tell us how that went and what it was like.
Sure. Chris and I both attended the Hooded Goblin Prime Championship. We were at an RP. Well, I was on RPQ there about last year, right near the end. So having another one so soon was pretty cool. But they just got their new location, and in that location they have like a pretty big play area along with a kitchen, which was pretty cool. I wasn't really expecting like a full service menu. I don't know about you, Chris, when you got your like lunch order.
I thought it was like pizza is what we were going to be getting for lunch.
Like hot dogs or something, right?
Yeah. But they were like they were sandwich level panini, like grilled sandwiches and tuna melts, and it was surprisingly good. And they had that $3 bottomless Stein. You have Coke for all 6 hours. Like that was ridiculous.
Dude, yeah, it was actually like super cool. And so, when we were looking at the price tag originally, I'm like, yeah, $70. Jeez. I'm like thinking, man, this better be pretty cool. But I was expecting like, not that high quality.
Yeah.
So we got there and we had like a full. They had like you get coffee there. They'd make you milkshakes. That was awesome. Also, they had like $1,300 in prizes.
Mm-hmm.
So no matter what, you got something, and that was super cool too. Like your kid picked out that I think he got the Kylo Ren guard.
Yeah, it was the Battle for Supremacy Funko set, and it was Kylo Ren fighting with the Praetorian Guard, and it was like a $100 value for the gift. And I came in somewhere near, very close to, possibly last. So yeah, I wasn't expecting anything. So when I got my name called, I said, Ethan, I go up there and grab whatever you want. And Chris Cook actually took the Outer Rim game that I was gonna grab if that was still there, but he snatched that up, and I said to my son, whatever you want to grab, you grab.
Yeah,
and
just get whatever you want, man.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny because I said the same thing. Like, I wanted the bunker, and I'm like, I'm not gonna buy a bunker, but getting a bunker for free would be pretty cool. Then our buddy who went up, Nick, grabbed the bunker, and I'm like, oh well, here we go. It's the same thing. I'm like, all right, I got to rethink my strategy, but I ended up getting half a core set of robots. The CIS, they had like 2 halves of a core set. They split one up. So that was really cool.
I was hoping you were going to grab the 5th Trooper crate mat that you donated yourself. Just grab it back, and then maybe try to sell it off out of your trunk in the parking lot when the thing was over.
Hey kid, I heard you like some mats. Why don't you check out my?
Hey Chris, you lost. You probably got a lot of salt. Have this salt mat.
Right? Dude,
hey, mister, what do you got there? Well, it's a salt map. What's a salt map? Shut up, kid, take the map.
That was actually that was really cool. Getting that stuff was awesome. The event went great. We 3 rounds was good because I think the FFG had said 3 rounds and top cut for 2. And what was really great was the 2 top cuts didn't have invites, so they actually played for it, and that's so refreshing and nice. Because normally it's like one guy will have it, one guy won't, and then they'll man, I want to go home. It's been like 9 hours or something. But it's cool because they actually it was like the showdown you always want to happen, right? The 2 top guys playing. Actually, the event just went so smoothly. Everything's on time. Rounds were easy to find. Terrain was awesome. Tables were easy to One of my problems with a lot of stores is the tables are kind of low. Normally card playing tables where you sit down at, so your back kills you.
Oh yeah.
Bending over, so they were decent, waist height, everything was just really on point.
So Evan, you had mentioned to me the judge was really, really good, and so I'm going to put Evan on the spot. He's going to search for his name now. But Chris, Evan had mentioned to me that he really loved how the judge made the calls and how he kind of explained stuff to me. So Chris, did you have any interactions with the judge, and how did that go?
Oh yeah, so I had 2 chairs beside my table, one for me, one for Andrew, because I said, listen, dude, just stay here with me the whole time, because I was gonna need him. That was our ongoing joke. But I've known Andrew for a long time, and he is maybe more than anybody my go-to text throughout the day of, hey, real quick, got a question for you. He's always been my go-to guy, and he's been judging a bunch before. I think this is his first prime, but he's been judging a bunch before. We had a skirmish that he actually hosted and judged the Saturday before, I guess, kind of a warm up. I called it my warm up to the prime, but he was so good. I didn't know what to expect for him. There's 25, however many guys were there, and he is really the be all and end all. And I listened to Brendan talk about being the head marshal. I've heard all these stories about judging before, and it was super chill. Everyone was calling for him, and then when he came over and made the call, I was like, okay, again, this is classic Canadian behavior. Oh, I'm so sorry for calling you in the first place. But it was super relaxed, and he did a fantastic job. Again, he's my friend, so I'm biased, but I think if you ask any one of those guys, they would say that he just did a bang up job.
No, yeah, it's funny. My buddy Pat rarely plays Legion. He's mostly an X-Wing player, but he bought a set of clones to play with us because he likes to travel with us, and this was his first Prime level event, and he was up there, and on our way back, he's like, that judge was really good. He made clear, concise calls, and he gave contextual reasons why it was happening. It wasn't just he just runs, right? The rules say he gave you actual reasons for the rules, stuff like that. He never generally mentions that, so to hear him call out Andrew was just kind of weird and cool, it's a neat thing. So no, he was excellent. He was very good.
I would assume that, again, this is not to knock any other judge who's ever judged an event before, but I would assume that an event that you're the game is dictated by that, time or dice down, which I painfully was aware of, as I mentioned. I feel like maybe the judge will come in, have a look, and go, "No, you're wrong," and move on. Like just to keep the thing going. And I guess in a time sense, that's appreciated. But I think I would rather have someone like Drew, who came out and just gave a bit more substance to the call he was making. It wasn't just like, "You're wrong, you're right, keep going." That's just opinion. That's personal opinion. I guess
Sure.
it's all subjective.
Well, I think it's a good way to do it now, because of all the newer players that we have, like our buddy Pat, who are new to the game and are still learning the game as they're playing. To have a judge, actually explain to you why the rule. I think you're more prone to remember it that way than versus like him just being like, "Nope,"
You're wrong. Move along.
Yeah.
But any. I'd like to mention a little hobnobbing for us here.
Yeah.
The Hooded Goblin is now an official retailer of the Fifth Trooper mats.
There you go. That's awesome.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
So they're gonna have mats. They're planning on placing an order for some of our new ones. So if you're in the Canadian regions and you don't want to pay for shipping from the US because it sucks, like, I get it, dude. It definitely sucks. I can't do much about it. But guess what? Hooded Goblin, they're going to be carrying them, so you can get them from them.
Yeah, that's fantastic. There is for our area, and I'm not in that area. I'm in I'm further south, but in that area for Ontario, like there's a huge chunk of our gaming community is right from that Kitchener, Waterloo, Georgetown, Brampton, like that area. And the guys from Canada know all those cities, but so to have them be kind of like the hub where you can go.
For Americans, it's Toronto.
Yeah, true. Yeah, true.
Easiest way to explain is just Toronto.
Now the thing is,
anyway.
now, but again, to keep this in mind is that Canada, unlike the States, is we've got less people, but a giant land mass, much like your Australian interview last week, where we have just lots of land, but not a lot of people. So Toronto is just over an hour maybe ish drive from that particular town of Georgetown. So if you lived in Toronto, maybe you wouldn't be driving to Georgetown generally, but now that there's a brick and mortar store, I would drive an hour to save shipping, on anything. So having a brick and mortar store there is a fantastic benefit for all of us.
Yeah, and that's something, if everyone out there in podcast land hasn't noticed yet, it is something we heard you. A lot of people wrote us notes and who love our podcast from all corners of the world and said, "Hey, not a critique, but just if we could have some more representation, that would be wonderful." And so I'm really trying to do that and show that this community of ours, to go back to our earlier conversation, is actually international, and there's just tons of excited people that love this game and love to be part of this community from all walks of life, all over this world of ours. And so just being able to connect with them and get them mats and have them be part of the community and be happy to play Legion, because I know, like, in some parts, we were talking to Luke last week and talking to Chris now, like, sometimes it's hard to get stuff from in these other countries because, for instance, I was talking to a gentleman from South Africa the other day, and he was saying that, like, a lot of the board games and a lot of the companies, there are some in Germany and stuff, but a lot of the coolest stuff comes out of the US. And so it's hard for a lot of these countries to get stuff or to get news or to get information, and so I'm just really hoping that we're helping and that we're kind of spreading the news that, hey, it's an international event and game and community.
Well, there are only really, if you think about it, there are two big players kind of as far as voices for our community, and you're definitely one of them, and that's at the very least you're the ones getting that constant news, that information to people, and I know guys do podcasts, and my friend Jesse does one for the Crisis Protocol game, and we talk all the time. He's like, "Man, you have no idea how many hours go into recording, editing, preparing, and then releasing a weekly podcast, that we're doing it essentially for free. You're taking your time and your love of the game to put this product out for people to enjoy on a weekly basis. And it's a lot of work. And knowing you guys for as long as I have, you have the same kind of work ethic. You're putting the time into the little sound bites before each segment and all the things you're doing. This is all just your time. Like I don't know if people don't realize this. They should at this point, but it isn't like you're on someone's payroll and this is your full-time job. This is something you're offering the community as a you aren't charging to subscribe to the podcast. Like you're getting entertainment and information and strategy, and then the scoundrels will come in and they'll do their strategy talk, and you're getting all of this, and then the guys can reach out to you or Kyle or David or and then you're talking to them one-on-one in the chat group, and it's all free, and it's all your time that you're giving. So I definitely think, if they don't know, people have to be aware of what goes into it and what you're offering, and that's a huge thing that we're getting from you guys. So I'll speak for the community and say I appreciate everything you guys have been doing since day one.
Well, thanks, man.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Well, and on that note, with our inflated heads and egos,
let's get the hell out of here.
Yeah, let's land this plane. Chris, once again, thank you so much for coming on and being real with us and talking to us about things that I know you speak very freely about them, but it can't be easy. So I really appreciate that, man. And we appreciate everything you do for the community and all the posts and
for real,
comments that you have out there. And so thanks for coming on. We appreciate having you.
Thanks so much. I appreciate you saying that. I do it for the same reason you do it. I love the game, and I want other people to love it, and I want this game to touch people and affect people the way it's affected me. And so I'll keep posting if people will keep reading. So I appreciate you guys giving me a platform to talk.
Yeah. And all right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. Look forward to our next podcast next week.
Everyone, stay rad.
Join us next week for another edition of the Fifth Trooper Podcast.
This has been a Fifth Trooper production.